Good evening and welcome to this new and old Malden Neighbourhood Committee, whether here in person or watching on the webcast. My name is Councillor Leslie Heath. I'm chairing the meeting this evening. In the event of an emergency and the sounding of an alarm, the emergency evacuation procedure is to leave by the main staircase located behind me here and congregate at the front of the building. Anyone requiring assistance should remain in their seats and an officer will assist you from the building. Please also note the exit out of the building is located through the double doors behind me. This meeting is being filmed for live broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel, and an archive version will be available to view on the Council's website after the meeting finishes. The broadcast will be suspended during any adjournments in proceedings and if the committee resolves to consider information as exempt business. Please can everyone present in the meeting ensure their mobile phones are switched off or in the silent mode for the duration of this meeting. Thank you. Right, so who's who here tonight? Those of you who've been before probably know the councillors, but if we could quickly go round from Councillor Thorpe at the end, quickly to introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Councillor Richard Thorpe, representing Motsbury Park and Malden East Ward.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Councillor Coogan, Coombe Ward, thank you.
Councillor Sillett, Coombe Ward.
Councillor Bolton, also Coombe Ward.
Councillor Yvonne Tracy, Green Lane and St James Ward.
Councillor Lynn Henderson from Motsbury Park and Malden East Ward.
Councillor Mark Durrant from New Malden Village.
Councillor Robert Kim from New Malden Village.
Good evening. Councillor Massimi from Old Malden.
Councillor Elizabeth Park for Old Malden.
Thank you. We also have a number of officers in attendance this evening to give an overview of reports and advice during the meeting. I have Sam Nichols, my neighbourhood clerk here from Dem Services, and on my left I have Richard Dean, who is the neighbourhood manager, and then I have Matt Hill from Highways. First of all, tonight we're going to have a minute's silence before we begin the meeting tonight. You probably will have heard of the sad news of the passing of former councillor Jason Hughes. Councillor Hughes served as an Old Malden ward member from May 2018 to May 2022 and sat on this committee when it met as the Maldens and Coombe neighbourhood. He also sat on the Community and Engagement Committee and served as the opposition spokesperson for business and leisure during his time in office. I'd like to ask you all now to stand for a minute's silence in his memory. Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. The first item on the agenda is public questions. Do we have any questions from members of the public this evening on items not on the agenda? Mr. Rees, would you like to come forward to the desk? The mic is on all the time there, so just get settled, and when you're ready to speak, do you have any timing on this? No? There's no timing on this, but just ask your question when you're ready. Thank you.
Oh, midnight.
fine. Evening, councillors, officers. My wife and I had hoped our visit here in December would have been our first and only one to resolve the issue of the question I'm putting forward. We are now 3 months in, and meeting Simon this evening, 2 years since we first raised the question. So, I think you've all got a copy of the question in front of you. I will read it out for you. Question: the ongoing problem of non-removal of decking stroke structures from the public highway, i.e. the public footpath to the front of both 104 and 88 Burlington Road, New Malden. This question relates to the written question on the same subject put to this committee at the December 23 meeting and a pre-prepared answer given in response at that meeting. Having been unable to obtain an update on the progress of the previously agreed action, we have reluctantly decided to return to this committee in the hope one could be provided. Basically, we are asking that an update be provided on what has or has not been carried out regarding the above problem. Unfortunately, to date, there is no physical sign of any movement as regards the removal / modification of the above structures, and no officer has made contact to discuss any proposals RBK may put forward to resolve the issue. This apparent inaction has only served to allow / embolden the owner / occupiers of both premises, both locations. We also reserve the right to put supplementary questions and or make comment should the need arise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rees. Yes, I'm going to ask Matt Hill from Highways now to come back on that question. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Rees. And firstly, I'd like to say sorry that you haven't had the update that you would have hoped, or indeed you haven't seen as much action as you would have liked. We are taking action, but to be honest with you, it's not the highest priority of the council, and we're quite limited in terms of our resources, so it is taking longer than we would like, or certainly than you would like. Obviously, the plan we have, which we have commenced with, so first of all, there is some uncertainty around the status of whether the land is adopted highway or not and the land ownership, and we just want to make 100% certain that we've got our facts right.
Can I come in, please?
Of course, yeah.
January 2023, Highways officer sent an email to the chair detailing it was public highway, full stop.
Yeah.
We found that out when pay and display was installed, a few years ago now, and a very, very narrow footpath was being proposed with a lamppost in the middle of it and a pay and display machine in the middle of it, which was then relocated onto the public highway we are discussing, which runs from George to Queen's Roads. 104, I'm very sorry, in the reply that came at December, the owners of 104 Burlington Road thought they owned the land. I've never known a businessman who thinks he owns something. He either knows or he doesn't know. End of story. Likewise, as far as 88 is concerned, the agent quite rightly delineated the ownership, which stopped short of coming out onto the footpath, indicated it was the footpath, but then proceeded to state in their planning application that since it was a restaurant, or running as a restaurant, they had tables and chairs, a false statement. We use an actual restaurant from the day it opened until the chef unfortunately had a stroke. He was very good. And the most you had outside was an A board, nothing else. But they've tended to use that as an argument to come out. Since then, cycle hoop, I assume installed by Highways, has been taken out. to allow easy access over this new decking that shouldn't be there anyway. We've tried to find out who took it out, whether it was Highways or whether it was the owner. Whichever, wrong. Someone has kowtowed, and there seems to be a reluctance to take action. I'm sorry you're here getting the short end of the stick.
No,
this
that's
evening.
fine. That's fine.
Yeah, could you let the officer just continue with
I
his
will,
answer?
but it's
Thank
just
you.
he got to a point where unfortunately it didn't make sense.
You can come back with a supplementary question, but can I just let Matt Hill just finish
Yeah,
off
yeah,
his
certainly.
reply?
I'm
Thank
not
you.
disputing your version of events. I'm just saying that we want to be 100% sure before we take any formal action that we're clear on ownership, we're clear on adopted highway status. And just to be clear, land ownership and adopted highway status are two different things legally. So you can have adopted highway on private land, for example. So we need to be very careful that we've got our facts straight. So we are checking that. We will do that. Then, essentially, we will offer them the opportunity to apply for a licence to have the structure there. And that doesn't mean that we will say we'll agree the licence, but we'll offer them the opportunity to apply for a licence. We will then consider the licence against our standards and whether we think it's suitable or not. A highways licence, that is. If it is, we will licence it and charge them accordingly. If it's not, then we will instruct them to remove it. And if they don't remove it, we'll give them sufficient warning, but we will remove it and recharge them accordingly. Obviously, we would rather not get to that point because that's time consuming and effort and creates a lot of bad feeling and everything else. But we will move it forward. I have to admit we haven't moved forward as fast as you would like. It's just a question of priorities at the moment. And the other point I would make is that in terms of planning, obviously planning is a separate regime to highways. There is planning permission for one of the structures, I think. Whether it's complied with or not, if you haven't already, I would encourage you to go on the council's website and report it as a breach of planning, and they will separately pick that up. But I would put the health warning on that they also have constrained resources, and it's probably not their highest priority, to be honest. And I will take that. I don't know about the cycle hoop, but I'll take that point away willingly and follow it up.
My wife will kill me for this.
Do you have... Thank you,
I
Matt.
do have a question.
Do you have a further question,
I
supplementary?
have more than one going by that.
One. I think...
I'm very sorry. We've reserved the right to put questions, plural. I will be as brief as I can, Chair.
Go ahead with your supplementary question, then. Thank you.
Planning is a no-no. There's a clause at the bottom end of any planning application when it's all approved that says it doesn't give you the legal entitlement to do what's there if you don't own it, and they don't own it. It's as simple as that. And if you go on the council's website and put a little arrow in front of 88 and 104 and anywhere in between in that section of the highway, it will show you as, and it will accept it as a fly tip because it is council owned. Outside of that, it will not accept it. Legal department of the council checked the ownership when the pay and display was put in, and it was confirmed then. So you don't have to spend 2 years trying to find out who owns it. It's there. It's case history.
I'm not disputing that for a moment. I'm
That's
just saying
fine. I'm sorry about this, but
Yeah.
I spent 20 years of my life sitting in your sort of position answering similar questions. So I apologise for that. You've just got the short end.
No, that's quite all right.
But
That's what I'm here for.
in that respect, planning, yes, they authorise something, but read the detail. The detail says you only give them permission to do it. It doesn't give you the legal right to do it. You've got to own that land before you can use it. As the chair will say, and I will digress very gently, my wife and myself, had a problem with planning. They actually come up with a single-storey extension on the back of our house to approve something next door. We have not got a single extension. So don't talk to me about planning They may have their restraints, but by God.
Excuse me, do you have another question?
Yes, when are we going to get an answer?
Is
It's
that
a
it?
straightforward legal answer. The council owns the land. They are encroaching on the public highway. So why hasn't a single letter from the council's legal department gone to both of these entities just to tell them to take it off? It's quite simple. I'd loan you the money to send the letter. I'd even get our solicitor to send it for you.
I think the officer explained why they haven't done that so far.
I'm sorry. You were told in January last year that the council owned the land, that the council didn't have any licensing arrangement, similar to other boroughs, and he would look into it. Why, after January, we're in 12 months further on, well, 14 months further on. I still got a copy of the email. So, I'm sorry, I do appreciate financial restraints means you may have problems with staffing. But that doesn't answer the question why this council is not doing their job, whether it be elected members or officers. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your response. I take it on board. I'll leave it at that.
Well, as I said, we are committed to doing it. We have been slower than we would like for the reasons I've explained, but
If
we
you
will bring something back.
would please liaise with the chair, because the chair would have an email where we indicated that perhaps a licence along the lines that obviously is used up in the high street. There's no
absolutely.
decking involved.
Yeah, we have the mechanism to do it, absolutely.
There's no deckings involved. There's no structures involved. They just put out tables and chairs and they take them back in. So why are we thinking of licensing encroachment in the way that's being done in Burlington Road? I know.
I'm afraid I can't answer that
I know
question
you're
Just to
for
be
you.
clear, I'm not prejudging the outcome of a licence application. All I'm saying is that's the process we will
But
follow.
one of your earlier officers actually said there was no licensing arrangement. It actually exists in RBK, and he's put it in the email to the chair, January 2023. I would advise you both have a good look at it. I know that sounds a little bit hard, but
That's fine.
that's a fact.
We'll take that away.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
That door or that door? Don't take
the
it
rear door,
personal. I hope I don't have to come back in 3 months' time.
This door, because sometimes that door is locked at the bottom.
I've got the
So
schoolkeeper.
go-
I've got the schoolkeeper to open it for me.
Yeah, I know, but there's a function downstairs
Yes,
on
in the main hall.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it may or may not be open tonight.
Yeah.
But if you go to the rear here, that will be better. Do you want to catch your wife before she goes out that way?
Yeah, she'll go that way.
This way.
Don't worry.
I'm going this way. I came up this way and I'm going this way.
Okay, as you wish.
I'll follow. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Item 2, petitions. Do we have any notification of any petitions this evening? No, thank you. Item 3, apologies. Do we have any apologies for absence or attendance of substitute members?
Yes, Chair, just apologies tonight from Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Sam. Declarations of interest, item 4. Members are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or any other registrable or non-registrable interest relevant to items on this agenda. Do any members have any declarations of interest? Councillor Kim.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare the interest regarding the item Annex 1, Jubilee Square Pavilion Encil bid, because I shared some community interest work with the, the proposer.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kim, as previously discussed with my colleague Gary, he indicated that in this case you wouldn't be able to sit on that item and discuss that.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I better declare, and I like to make it clear.
Yeah.
So that's why I.
Oh, no, I
declare.
understand. I'm just saying that I'm just making it clear so everyone knows that's what's going to happen when it
Yeah,
comes to that
that's
item.
right, yeah.
Yeah, so item 8.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, do members agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of February 2024 as a true and correct record?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 6, excuse me, is Neighbourhood Manager's Report. Richard, would you like to introduce your report this evening? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, members. Good evening, everyone. In common with the other 3 neighbourhoods, part of the information that chairs and members wished to see was around the work of our wonderful rangers, just what they do and what they do to make the environment a better place. So, I don't propose to go through the report verbatim, although it's I would say reasonable but very short, Chair. But there is a list at point 1 of the normal work that the rangers do, from cutbacks to graffiti removal, etc. and so forth. And as I said, we've got a ranger on each neighbourhood, and sometimes they work together to do the bigger tasks. So underneath at table 1 in the report is a summary of ranger activity. Now, it's to be noted that that's up to, from the beginning of the year up to Friday the 23rd of February, which seems rather strange, of course, but that's just before the pre-agenda meeting. So we can see in that period of time that the tasks that are within the table, there's 205 separate tasks undertaken by rangers covering the New and Old Malden area, and that's from January the 2nd to Friday the 23rd. 38 of those have been attending to the notice boards, which we've had many conversations about recently, of course. And a number of them, 30, are, seem a bit bizarre really, but a task requiring use of the van. Now that's quite a broad one that in consultation with the rangers we needed to put in, but just to explain, that's activities that they need to use a van for. So if they pick up a fly tip, they've got to take that fly tip to the recycling centre. If they pick up an abandoned bike, they've got to do that. And obviously then they've got to do some maintenance, and when I'm around, they've got to do some cleaning of it as well. So that requires a second one. And then obviously 23 incidences of litter picking. What I would say is it's very early to pick up trends, to be honest with you. So as this develops, the numbers actually for graffiti removal in this neighbourhood at the moment aren't particularly high compared to others. That, for example, reaches the top 3 of all 3 other neighbourhoods. But I would expect as time goes on and we enter, unfortunately, those summer periods, that to change. So, Chair, as I said, a very brief report. I'm happy to take questions from anyone.
Thank you very much, Richard, for that. Yeah, and I would underline the great work that the rangers do for us in the neighbourhood. They make a massive difference. Does anybody have any questions or just comments about that? Councillor Sillett, did I see your hand? No.
No, it was
Whose
an
hand was
inadvertent
it?
raise of
Oh,
hands. But,
okay.
you know, I just want to say that we're very impressed with the report. I've written to Richard Dean saying we'd love to meet. Is it Jackie Doré, our local?
Yes, it is, yeah.
I'd really be interested to meet her if she's got the time and have a chat about if we can support her. We'd certainly like to get a few more notices in our new notice boards, and I believe she has the key. So
She does, yes. Yes.
I spoke to Dan Slocum at AFC Youth Centre, and he said he'd like to put some stuff that they're doing. It's right outside his, but he doesn't have a key either. I don't know if it could be arranged or that's allowed, or whether we could get him to be able to put some
I
stuff
can give you a quick answer. No, it's not allowable. And it's not allowable because there is such a demand on notice board space that we have to manage that space. And of course, we have to make sure that it's, dare I say, politically neutral and giving a message which doesn't support businesses is around. So, but what I would urge is that if anybody's got any members of any residents who would like to put anything in the notice boards, if they contact us, contact the Ranger Service, we'll always consider it and get back to them. And if the answer is no, we can't do it, we'll give them a reason why we can't display the notice.
So the AFC Centre should come through me, basically, and...
to be honest, the AFC people would know us and have contact with us, so they can go direct to the Rangers, no problem at all.
Okay.
Thanks. Councillor Massimi and then Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I think it's a very underrated task they carry out, and my question will be, do we have a way to find out, as councillor on monthly or quarterly basis, by ward, what is the breakdown, what action has been taken, and also, I was quite surprised to see the range they actually cover and the tasks they carry out, because every time I raise most of the time when I raise the councillor inquiries, they do not appear to be the first point of contact, and I just think that we're probably missing an opportunity for the fast response when they can act rather than just going through a senior officer or different department. So I'd just love to see a breakdown by ward and also the task carried out, as well as eventually a kind of a, they do this, they don't do that, what do we consider picking up litters versus fly tipping that we report and is likely to be Veolia and so on, just to see where the boundary starts and ends, and also what shift or when we can reach out to them, if it's Monday to Friday or if it's on weekend, or just to get a better sense of how we can work even better together. Thank you.
Would you like to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. You've hit the nail on the head, really. There's a big grey void area that's between contracted work and what the rangers do, and sometimes the two cross over. So if you take fly tips as a great example, of course, if they report, the correct way to report a fly tip is online, and then it goes through via an automated process to our contractors to come and pick it up. Sometimes when that doesn't happen as quickly as it should, we ask the rangers to step in, but they really operate on the smaller scale of litter picks in that example, given that their facilities they've got with their vehicles aren't really big enough to take big fly tips. And bizarrely enough, when we turn up with our vans, because we're not contractors to the recycling centre, we sit in the same queue as everybody else. So no priorities and no love there. So yes, it can be drilled down into ward level. I think that's whoever comes next time, be it me, be it Denise or someone new, it's something we discuss. It's not an easy task with our data team to do that. So if you did want that, and maybe it's something we discuss in the future, then maybe that would be a periodically enhanced report rather than every time. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's just a very short note from me to thank, obviously, the Rangers for doing such a great job. And in fact, I was at Dickeridge Recreation Ground earlier today for the regular Combe Vale Councillor surgery, and Jackie happened to be there loading some really good stuff into the new notice board. That was great to see. She seemed in good spirits. I was in good spirits, and it was great to see.
She's just come back from holiday, so she's in good spirits.
That's right.
Thank you very much. Anybody else got any comments or questions? Councillor Thorpe.
Just more praise for Jackie. We bump into her from time to time. She's huge fun, very engaged. And to Mike's point, I think, given that where the boundary is between our two wards, I suspect she'd have to remember which side of the road she was on sometimes to be sure that she's got the right ward, because if you drive up the wrong side of the road, you could be on our side where everything's much tidier and it's a much nicer place, whereas, of course, your side is... No, it's not true at all. But those boundaries are not that easy for policing if you're actually doing things day to day.
Thank you. Anybody else? Can we move on to the next? Councillor Coogan. Thank you.
Thank you for this. I mean, for some time I've been asking for one contact that we could just go to resolve long-standing issues. So, hopefully, this will be from now on things will get better. The only thing currently sort of still on the back burner is some street cleaning, debris, and flooding in certain hotspots. Despite sort of contacting highways and other people, it's still sort of languishing on the back burner. Not sure whether the Rangers would be able to sort of help sort of solve these kind of things on our behalf. I mean, can we just go to them as our first port of call when we are not getting any sort of redress?
No,
on a number of issues?
And the reason for that, although it's frustrating, is we must go organisationally to the people who are contracted to do the work first and hold those people to account. What we mustn't do is use the Rangers, if you like, as a as a pseudo contract. So I know it's frustrating. I understand it's frustrating when you get those incidences. You've gone through the correct processes. Then it's time to contact the neighbourhood manager and sort of try and unplug it for you.
Thank you. Right, moving on to the next item, item 7, which is to agree the committee council award funding arrangements for the municipal year 2024-25. And I'll be pleased to invite Richard to give us a summary of the report. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Just to prove as officers we've listened to chairs this year. The criticism, negative comment, and quite rightly so, has always been, as we move from one financial year to another, that there appears a period of 2 or 3 months when we've not agreed new working arrangements where people maybe have the opportunity to have some council award funding allocated to their event or their cause. And of course, it's always around that April, May, June time when there's a lot of community events as well. So we've brought the June report to you early this year for consideration. And in essence, as you've rightly said, Chair, the council award funding of £2,000 per councillor is up for discussion about how it's allocated. So the options, if you like, detailed at 2A, B and C are, number 1 is to carry on as normal, and that is the £2,000 allocated individually to members. Obviously provides members with huge flexibility in allocating funding to causes upon their ward, and there's no reason why members can't collaborate with other councillors in their ward or outside their own ward if there's a bigger pot of money needed. Option B looks at pooling the entire council ward funding budget so it can be added to the neighbourhood community grant. Obviously, if this happens, then all your funding is subject to the same rules, regulations and processes that a neighbourhood community grant is, and that is obviously that the decision for any of this would have to be made at neighbourhood committee. The third one's a bit of a hybrid of the two, if you like, really, in that it's pooling I like to call it the Surbiton version because it's the only neighbourhood that's ever adopted it, and it's just that they pool their council award funding and they decide at neighbourhood committee to allocate it accordingly. Now that obviously only gives you, as a group of councillors, 5 opportunities within the year to allocate your funding, as it has to be agreed at committee. So, Chair, once again, a very short report, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to propose for the purposes of the debate that we continue the same funding allocations as last year, which allows for members to allocate council award funding individually. Do I have a seconder for that?
I second that, Chair.
Thank you, Lynn. So, moving on. Does anybody have any comments or questions on that? Or is that decision unanimous?
Yes.
Unanimous?
Unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. The next item, item 8. Councillor Kim, do you want to go outside and come back?
Yeah.
Somebody will come and call you when we've finished. Oops. Right. Item 8 is the allocation of NSIL, Neighbourhood Community Infrastructure Levy Fund. I was hoping that Paul Young was going to be here, but he isn't. So, as this is a deferral from last time, would you be able to just introduce this item for me?
I shall try my best.
Thank you. Application for it's just to introduce it. Thanks.
Just bear with me, Chair, while I get the right page. Thank you, Chair and members. So the item in front for recommendation is the allocation of neighbourhood community infrastructure levy funding to the projects set out in section E. And if I move down through the report, this is obviously a returning application for the Jubilee Square Pavilion, the application being £23,000 of funding to support that. Now, in section 7, 6 and 7 of the report, evidence is by Paul in the written report the amount of money is available to the committee, and I know he'll have gone through that previously. And I suppose the last thing to say with the report before we finally go on to it is the applicant, Simon Edwards, is here to put the report forward and answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Richard. Simon, do you want to come to the desk? Thank you. So before we get on to the debate and the questions that, I propose a motion that the application for the Jubilee Square Pavilion project for the sum of £22,000 be approved. Do I have a seconder for that?
You do, Chair.
Thank you. And would you like to repeat or whatever you did?
Well, I don't want to repeat everything I said last time because...
If you have anything to add.
Yeah, most of you were here last time. I know 2 of you weren't, but most of what I said last time actually is in the report. And all of you are aware of what goes on at Jubilee Square and what the purposes of the pavilion would be. Now, as this was deferred for a particular purpose, I'll concentrate on that because that seems appropriate. Chair, and if I may say so completely correctly, you proposed it be deferred for clarification and on the issue of the attitude of the council to giving permission for this structure to be on the square. That's not planning permission, that's a different issue. This would be simply a license to put it there. And then the question of its ongoing maintenance and who would own it and who would be responsible for it. Because unfortunately the New Malden Town Centre Partnership is a relatively new organisation, been around for, I don't know, a couple of years or so, and we don't have the resources to undertake the continued ownership and maintenance of the structure. We're just not set up to do that. We're there to promote the square, to promote events on the square, and in the high street generally to promote the cultural diversity and regeneration of the high street generally. So it not being clear whether or not the council would, so to speak, adopt the pavilion after its construction, that question was deferred for investigation, and you have in your report the answers from 3 potentially relevant departments, being the Regeneration Department from Anna Doyle, Property from Colin Lewington, and Open Spaces from Rob Waite. All of whom said, well, and I paraphrase, not us gov. And so in a sense, there is no clarification in the sense that would be, there's not a yes, certainly not a yes. Doesn't really appear to be a no, but there's certainly not a yes. And I suppose if that is a clarification, that's as far as we get. I understand the misgivings of the officers. I think some of them are a little bit overdone, to be honest. in terms of maintenance, the structures would be made of treated wood, very similar to much of the playground equipment we see around the borough, and the people from One to One Collective who would be responsible for its design and build say it's something that you would retreat once in about 5 years. So it's that's not a massive problem. There would be the danger of graffiti and antisocial behaviour. Again, I can only speak from the experience that we've had in relation to Jubilee Square. The square is covered by very good LED lighting and CCTV cameras. And whereas I know there is a persistent problem with ASB in the car park, and that is a real problem, a real issue. And I would not treat that lightly, and I don't dismiss it. But you just look at the square, the gardens that we've got there have not been molested. The hoardings have not been sprayed with graffiti. The existing seating has not been set on fire. I think actually it'd be rather hard to set it on fire. I mean, very solid stuff, but you know, flippancy aside, you see what I mean. So I think those concerns are somewhat overdone. I also understand the concerns about the temporary nature of the square and the what next use of this pavilion. In terms of how long that pavilion might be there, well, we're very much in the dark about that. Just to remind you, for those who weren't around, in 2020, the matter last came before a strategic committee, as far as I'm aware, in February of 2020, which is now 4 years ago. And a sum of money was set aside to take the matter, the redevelopment on to REBA Stage 1 Plus, but that I don't think has happened. Awful lot of water under the bridge since then, of course. We'll all remember what happened after February 2020. COVID came along. That put everything on ice. Then, of course, we've had a number of economic shocks since then as well, which have rather skewed the economics of building like this, with building costs going up by 20 or 30% and land values not exactly keeping pace, if in fact going down. So I understand the reasons for delay, believe me, I do. But what does delay mean? It means that there's no prospect of the square disappearing under the bulldozers for quite some time. I wouldn't presume to guess when that would happen, but it's a few years yet. We have thought through what might happen after that. There was a suggestion that we haven't thought it through from one of the councillors last time, but we have thought it through. It would cost money to move it, and we would have to raise that at the end of its use on the square, and we would have to find somewhere to go for it. There would have to be consultation about that, planning, etc. But we have thought that through. It's something we take on board and we recognise. So where does that leave you as councillors? Well, it leaves you in a difficult position because there is, despite the deferment, still no clarity about whether the council is prepared to take it on. You have a choice. You could say, well, in that case, what were the other, if you like, difficulties surrounding the project? We'll just put it on hold, park it, wait for better times, whatever. There's not a big pot of money, and I take that on board as well. And there are probably other projects coming along in the pipeline that you would like to support. That's very understandable. And so you could do that, or you could say, no, we think this would be great for the square, great for the neighbourhood, and we'll give it the green light, and then put the council, whether it's the property department or open spaces, on the spot and say, well, we've backed it, we would like you to as well. So that's the choice, really. I put it like that, somewhat diffidently, because it's not my decision. It's your decision. And I urge you to back it, but, you know, honestly, I perfectly understand if you felt that you couldn't. So, you know, don't go away from here thinking I feel terribly about you all if you don't back it. That's not me. I think you all know me well enough to know that. So there it is. I hope that's been helpful. And as before, I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Simon. Who'd like to ask questions going forward? Anybody? Any comments? Councillor Thorpe.
I'm struggling with the allocation of costs. So we have let's call it a £50,000 project, because we've got to allow for a certain amount of maintenance, which is going to be split 50-50 between the council and the partnership. And there's uncertainty about ownership. And then what troubles me is if there's uncertainty about ownership, there's uncertainty about who has responsibility for decommissioning. And that could be quite a big deal at the end. And that feels like an open check a bit. If we don't know who has responsibility for taking it away, and we don't really know who has responsibility for maintaining it, then my concern is if we agree to it, we are, in your language, de facto accepting that it might be our liability. And we haven't got any clarity on that from the officers. So that liability end of this troubles me. And I don't, from what you've said, Simon, it doesn't look as though we'll get much clarity on that in the near term.
No, Councillor Thorpe, you're absolutely right. There is no clarity on that at the moment, and that is, I accept, quite a difficult issue. In terms of the project costs that we've outlined, they are simply the capital costs. They don't include any amount for ongoing maintenance. So I want to make that clear.
Yeah, can I just ask a question about the items that weren't there, which was the electrics, the stairs, and the paints and the panels that weren't included? What is the sort of ballpark figure for that, or don't you know that?
Well, the costs that we've included include the ramp, because it's important that it be accessible. The costs include treating it so that it is fully treated once erected, and the actual building itself wouldn't have electricity supplied to it as a standard thing, so there would be no electric cabling there, but it would be near the electric point, which is in the, get my northings right, the western side of the square, the high street side of the square, so that if there were an event there which needed electricity, they could hook up to that.
Thank you. I have another small question. It says in C9, under the paragraph expected project outcomes,
Yes.
And it seems to be a shelter for people watching a performance, or a place where people perform. But am I right in thinking that it can't be both? You'd have to choose. It wouldn't be big enough to have seating for the audience and people performing at the same time.
You're quite right. It would have two purposes. One is as a from day to day when, for example, there's nothing going on in the square. It would be somewhere people could go and sit and shelter either from the burning sun or at this time of year from the pouring rain. In that sense, it would be a shelter. But obviously, well, I say obviously, but you're absolutely right, Councillor, that when there was a performance on, it would just be for the performers.
Thank you for the clarification. Anybody else got? Councillor Durrant.
Thank you. I actually, I've been thinking through this, and I am sort of minded to support this. One of the reasons I had thought about this as well is if, for example, you say that will be there for at least 5 years. We get coming to us events every year, and each time the staging is at least £2,000, possibly £3,000. So, and it does come to this committee. So I think from that point of view, it can actually become cost effective as well. And obviously I note that the Town Centre Partnership is providing half of the cost as well. I think it would be a very good thing to actually have that as well. And if we can continue to have more and more events on the square, I think actually that could only be a good thing. And to have this there would be very good. I do remember the Tamil Pongal event, and it was quite windy, wasn't it? So I think it would be good for that as well to have staging, which is a little bit more solid than what we've seen in previous times and previous events. Thank you.
Anybody else got a question? No, I'd like to come back on Councillor Durrant's comments about the costing of staging for particular events. And I've noted that different events require different types of staging. And this is where the ownership comes into it. Does the Town Centre Partnership, would it own the pavilion in so much as that it would charge people for using that?
No. The idea is that the pavilion, once erected, becomes an asset of the council, and so that when people apply to use the square, as they have to, if it's anything other than a very small event involving no more than about a dozen people, they have to apply for a permission, go to the events team, put in an event management plan, and part of that event management plan would be, well, we want to use the pavilion, and the event management team would have then to consider whether their plans should be permitted, and they would, according to whatever scale of fees that they are operating at the time, charge a fee for that permission. I would not think that what they would charge would be anything like the cost which would otherwise be charged to bring in a stage, which, as Councillor Durrant correctly says, can be about £2,000, although, as you say correctly also, Councillor Heap, it varies according to the nature of the stage you get. But it wouldn't be anything like that, the fee that would be charged to the organisation, but it would be charged by the council and for the council.
Okay, so that's a sort of unknown, really.
Sorry?
That is an unknown then. It's an unknown quantity.
Yes.
Yeah. We don't know the scale of fees that the council's going to charge for having that.
I personally don't. I don't know whether Richard would know the sort of fees which are charged, but I personally don't.
I don't either.
I'm afraid everyone's looking this direction expectantly, but I have to disappoint. I'm sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Councillor Kim would know.
I think, though, I can say with some confidence that such fees would be charged would be far less than the cost of bringing in a stage.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thorpe, and then anybody else want to put their hands up, and then we'll go to a vote. Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to do it. I hesitate to say what I'm about to say because this runs the risk of an accountant and a lawyer disagreeing on what ownership is. But in accounting terms, you own an asset if you had take on all of the risks and rewards of that asset. And what you've described is just that. So we would have all the risks and we would get all the rewards, which means that we have a £50,000 asset with, let's assume, a 5-year life. So over 5 years, it would cost us £10,000 a year, which means we'd have to put on quite a lot of events to recover that £10,000 if it's £2,000 to £3,000 a time. But these are back of an envelope numbers. It's just that there's a lot of uncertainty there. Would we take on all the risks and rewards? If we were to, we have the asset and we have the decommissioning responsibilities. If it's shared with the partnership, that's slightly different. There's a lot of uncertainty in that for me, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just very quick one from me. Two things stand out to me from this discussion over the last 10 minutes or so. And the first thing is that Simon has agreed that we were right last time to defer it because of the lack of information we had. And I'm not convinced that we have really clarified that, as I think Simon also said. And he's, I think, nodding his head. So we really haven't moved things on much more forward from the last time. The second thing that really hits home for me, in fact, are the comments of my colleague, Councillor Thorpe, about ownership. I think he's absolutely hitting the nail on the head. And I was in two minds before coming in here, but I think I'm swayed by what I've heard both from Simon and from Councillor Thorpe, and particularly, of course, Councillor Thorpe about the ownership.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Coogan.
The thing is, in the absence of Councillor King, having a venue in New Malden where communities can come together is an excellent idea. But I take Mr. Edwards' point about, playground furniture or benches have not been set on fire. Somehow, sort of accommodation structure will attract some kind of antisocial behaviour in that area, unfortunately. But I know we're not talking about the Blagdon car park. I mean, there is a covered space on the top floor which is cordoned off with a little bit of, tender, loving care. Could be, made into an alternative spot for something very similar. But for some reason, that's off the agenda. So, it's not very helpful, but that's my sort of view at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you for your observations, Councillor Coogan. No? Any more? For any more? Councillor Sillett, and then...
I really want to support this because that concrete square just needs life and it needs these events, and I really applaud your association for putting this forward and trying to do something about it. I am nagged and plagued by the doubts that my colleagues have been raising. I actually dismiss the vandalism. I think, if we don't... We'd never build anything if we thought somebody's just going to burn it down if we built it. I take your points about the lack of vandalism in that square, despite the antisocial behaviour in the car park. So that's not a consideration. But I am a little bit plagued by the doubts that my colleagues have raised. And I have to say, I'm really a little bit undecided. I want to say yes. I feel that we haven't, as my colleague Andrew Bolton said, we haven't really got more clarification about the issues that caused us to defer last time. So I feel in a little bit of a difficult position because of that.
Thank you, Councillor Sillett. So we go to a vote. As in motion I set out on item 4, those in favour of the pavilion, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those against? Thank you. And those abstaining? 2. Thank you. I'm sorry that's fallen. Thank you for coming along, Simon. And as echoed by Councillor Sillett, thank you for putting this proposal forward.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Richard, you may leave the room. Item 9 now is the Kingston to Malden cycle route development. This is to note and comment on the proposed design of the missing section of the Kingston Road, Cambridge Road cycle route. Oh, yeah, or just, yeah, sorry. Yeah, and comments from this committee will go to the Place Committee, which will probably be in June of this year now. So I'd like to ask Matt Hill to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it's quite a bulky report in front of you. I will try and distill the essence down for this committee by emphasising that, for context, we've included proposals for the full length of the unfinished cycle route on Kingston Road, Cambridge Road. But by far the majority, is that the right word? Far the majority, that's not quite English. The largest part by far of it is actually in Kingston and North Kingston. So the only part that's directly relevant to yourselves, and I guess the only part that I'm directly seeking comments on, is the section between Georgia Road and California Road, which falls within your neighbourhood. We are seeking, as the Chair said, any comments from yourselves, which will go forward to Place Committee for the final decision in, it's anticipated to be in June, subject to the new municipal calendar being agreed. Yes, so and what we will be going forward to Place with is a recommendation to proceed with design and detailed design and implementation. Should everything be agreed, we're hoping to get on site in the autumn of this year. And the other thing I should emphasise, that for the stretch within your neighbourhood, the designs are essentially unchanged from the designs that were previously agreed. You may recall designs were previously agreed, and then due to COVID and TfL's financial difficulties, amongst other things, the route was left unfinished. So, but the section between California Road and Georgia Road, essentially, we're still proposing pretty much the same design that was agreed then. So there shouldn't be any significant surprises. That's not to say that there won't still be impacts, because there will, and to a degree, residents and business owners and so on and so forth may have changed in the intervening time since it was previously agreed, which was in, I'm just checking my notes, February 2020. So that's just the context, and just very briefly, the section in your neighbourhood, the proposal is to provide segregated cycle facilities on both sides of the road. Working from Georgia Road, just immediately east of Georgia Road, to upgrade to a new parallel pedestrian and cycle crossing in place of the uncontrolled crossing with island in the middle of the road there at the minute. We would create in a westbound into Kingston direction new segregated cycle facility in front of the retail parade along there at footway level, segregated from traffic, and on the north side of the road going east towards New Malden, a new bus stop bypass at the bus stop that's outside the new, just between the Kingston East development and Aldi, and then a protected cycle lane at carriageway level throughout that section up as far as Georgia Road, and then it picks up again where the scheme's already been implemented. Just to, I suppose the thing that's always of interest to people is waiting and loading and parking restrictions. So in short, I would just like to emphasise and be very clear that there is we are proposing on the south side of the road double yellow lines throughout. So at the moment, people can wait into peak outside the shops there. So that would be removed. Loading facilities would continue to be provided there into peak, but not parking. I suppose the other thing I would just like to emphasise is that there is a degree of what I would describe as established but illegal use of the private forecourts along that stretch by the various businesses. So, in a sense, we're not removing any parking because they shouldn't be doing it, but we all know that people that have been doing something for many years may have an expectation they should continue to be able to do that, and we're proposing to prevent that in future, except the very far western premises on the corner, which has got an established crossover. So that's all, and just in the report, there's quite a lot of detail in the report. A lot of it relates to the other neighbourhoods, but that's really covered in paragraphs 12 and 14, 12 and 13, just to be absolutely clear. We have engaged with the businesses along there, got some feedback, not a massive amount of feedback, to be honest with you. We would like to get on site in the autumn, and the overall costs probably in the region of £2 million, but for your stretch in your neighbourhood, in the region of £100,000 to £150,000. But just to emphasise, we're not looking for any funding from this committee. That would be a matter for Place Committee to resolve, given the strategic nature of the scheme. And we would look to implement the measures under experimental traffic orders, which gives us the ability to consult the public after they're implemented, and should we wish to amend the waiting and loading restrictions, then we would have that option. That is the same approach that we've taken along the rest of that route, so we're being consistent in our approach. I think that's the key points. I don't want to go on for too long. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Right, I'd like to call any questions or comments from the public. Andy, is it? Thank you. Sorry, I don't know your last name. From Kingston Cycle Campaign? Thank you. Take a seat. Welcome to the meeting. Yeah. Ask away.
Sure. Thank you. So my name is Andy Allen, and I'm here from Kingston Cycling Campaign. Most of you will already know that we are very keen to see this route completed, and I'd like to thank the officers for regularly meeting with KCC over the last year whilst these proposals have been developed. We strongly support the part of these changes that are being made within this neighbourhood. However, as mentioned in the report, most of the benefits of this route will only be achieved when it's fully joined up to the rest of the borough network. Although most of the remaining work is in the adjacent neighbourhood, members here tonight do have an interest in making sure the whole route is of a sufficiently high standard to allow all of our neighbourhood residents to use the whole length of the route in and out of Kingston. Up until a few weeks ago, this was very much in the proposals, but in a last-minute turnaround, hundreds of metres of the proposed protected cycle lanes were suddenly removed from these plans, once again leaving us with a big gap in this scheme. The Council has previously secured agreement from TfL to remove this stretch of low-quality bus lane, and traffic modelling showed indeed that there would be negligible impact on buses. But we appear to have fallen victim to a new wave of stubbornness. This sudden change in plans was an unwelcome surprise, and will lead to small kids having to jostle with buses and taxis in one direction, having to weave around the trees in the other direction, and unnecessary conflict on large stretches of shared pavements. Sheets 7 and 8 on the diagrams illustrate this point. We are therefore urging the Council to reconsider this last-minute revision, to re-engage with TfL, and to avoid the embarrassment of severely compromising this flagship scheme. So to summarise, we would ask members tonight to fully support the part of the scheme within this neighbourhood, but also to add into their comments that they join our concerns about the rest of this scheme. That's our point of view. If there's anything I can clarify in what I've said, I'm happy to do so.
Matt, do you want to come back on a couple of the points made there, especially the one about TfL and the bus lane?
Yeah, by all means, Chair. Thank you, and thanks for the comment. So I think, I mean, I didn't go into this in too much detail here, but yes, it is fair to say that the proposed designs for the stretch within Kingston, North Kingston, are significantly different to what was proposed back in 2020. Having said that, we continue to work with TfL to find what we think is the best outcome for all road users along this corridor. The particular concern of TfL is around impact on buses, as you rightly stated, and you're right to state that the previous designs were agreed by TfL. Having said that, we clearly want to work in partnership with TfL, and frankly, we want a financial contribution from them to implement the scheme. So there is a balance to be struck there. We hear what you're saying. I don't think. One of the reasons we are not coming to Kingston, North Kingston and Place Committee in June is because we want to have further discussions with TfL and make sure we get the best possible outcome for the borough. But I'm not denying that the current plan is for cyclists, arguably, well, probably not arguably, is not as good a plan as the previous plan in terms of loss of segregation. But I feel that it's still a reasonable plan and certainly better than nothing, which, I think the last thing that we would want as an authority looking at in the round is nothing to happen down there, because we desperately want something to happen down there that is a better outcome for cyclists. But undoubtedly there is a degree of compromise in those plans, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we've taken your points on board. Did the other gentleman want to speak, or he's just come for moral support?
Moral support, thank you.
I wasn't sure, I just thought I'd ask. Thank you. Right, so moving on to the debate, do any members have comments? Councillor Massimi and then Councillor Durrant. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Thanks for the report, and it's very clear and concise and very exhaustive as well. I was a little bit disappointed to find out that, or you can say no news is good news, that we have not received any feedback from the London Fire Brigade whatsoever in terms of providing an update or an outcome, which is fine by me. I guess they don't see any issue on point 14, but I would have hoped that they would have supported the claim that based on the finding in the past, there has been no impact on neither the cycle lane upgrade nor the change of speed limits on Kingston Road and over location. I also looked at the design, and I think I concur with the previous gentleman that it's a bold scheme, late but welcome. But I fear it's been designed for cyclists, but not by cyclists in many ways. But we can look into it. My suggestions regarding some of the challenge with the bus lane, which were mentioned, and therefore not having that segregated cycle lane. The question I would have is, could we therefore think outside the box, and even though we might not have the funding or the blueprint, to make sure that those bus lanes are used solely and only by buses or black cab 24/7, and not just during a few hours in a day, which is currently the case, which means that it's even more dangerous and confusing in many locations, because you can actually use it as a road user at some time, and other times you cannot. And I think it really needs to have clear explanation that it's only for TfL operated buses and or black cab eventually, but not every single VTC, not every single road users, because that is where the danger is. It's the lack of clarity and change on timing and day of the week. That's one way to look at it. So I think that's just my conclusion. I'm pleased to see that there should be no impact financially for us, because I understand the £250,000 is funded by and on behalf of TfL. And I hope that we can hopefully connect, because as mentioned earlier, it only makes sense if it's a kind of a network rather than just a patchwork. That's just my, no question. I hope to have maybe a few answers regarding the bus route suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Massimi. Matt, do you want to come back on just that point?
Just come back very quickly on that.
Councillor May,
yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Just very quickly, yeah, it's proposed, the bus lane would be 24/7. And your colleagues in Kingston, North Kingston, have already separately agreed to upgrading to WL lines along that full stretch. So in a sense, we've already got that authority partially there, if you like. So that, yeah, the very much intention would be 24/7. I will have to take the point away about buses and taxis and whether other vehicles, I'll take that point away as a detailed point, but I totally agree that we would want to, given the sort of compromises we're proposing to make along this stretch, we want to give the maximum protection to cyclists we can, and if it's 24/7 and only TfL buses, then that is obviously kind of maxing it out, if you like, and that's what we'd be aiming for, yeah, certainly.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Durrant.
Yeah, just one comment and one sort of more of a question. For me, as a cyclist, it can't come soon enough because, you know, you get to the end of the cycle lane and it just suddenly, I mean, I've been near collisions a couple of times. It's pretty dangerous at the moment. So, it may be a reason why the cycle lane in its current format isn't being used as much as it should be, because obviously it's only half done. So, that's my sort of observation. Question, and this is maybe more of a general question that it's certainly been asked a lot, not just here but around London, is on cycle lanes where they interact with a bus stop as well. That does become potentially dangerous as well. I know, watching local news, and there was possibly going to be some thoughts as to solutions for this as well, so it works for all road users. I just wondered if you could give us an update on that one.
Yeah. Do you want to answer that one? Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Totally agree with the comment about, we need to do something. It just stops at the moment. That's, far from ideal for anybody, and does put cyclists to a degree at risk if we're not careful. In terms of bus stops, we will, along the entire stretch here, we'd be using the shared use bus border approach. I think it's probably fair to say that I would describe that as the least worst solution. As we know, that space is tight along there. We haven't got the space at any of the bus stops on there to do the preferred solution, which would be to put the cycle lane segregated behind a little island like we've done outside Kingston University on Penryn Road, for example, and various other ones where we have got that space. So we would be using the shared use bus border approach. We would be designing them to the kind of latest guidance from Transport for London, which is around doing more than on some previous ones that we've done. And in fact, part of the proposals in Kingston, North Kingston, to modify one of the existing ones to change the surfacing to make it clearer, although the whole area is shared, that you make it much clearer that the back area is for pedestrians and the front area is for cyclists, and to give a sufficient buffer so that those people stepping off the bus at least have a reasonable sight line to a cyclist coming up, and vice versa. I'm not going to pretend that it's an ideal solution, but given the space constraints we've got down there, the only other option is actually to stop the cycle lane short and push them back into the carriageway, which is generally considered to be worse, I guess, in terms of the road safety risk.
Just a quick supplementary, if that's okay, Chair.
Yep.
And that is there a way that you could sort of flag up, to cyclists that, a bus stop is coming? Is that something that could be done? Because, I know, I must admit, if I'm sort of cycling or going at some pace, I don't necessarily, I can see a bus stop coming, but sometimes I want to get to my destination. And that is there something that can be done about that to flag things up a little bit more? Matthew?
Yes, I'm just reading the report. I was going to keep going, I'll just read that.
I'll keep talking.
Thank you, Councillor. So we are proposing to put additional kind of slow markings on the approach and at the ramps to hopefully do the sort of maximum we can to make it really clear that they're entering into a shared area. Except I think on some of them it's not as clear as it could be at the moment. But I think inevitably it will remain a compromise if we're honest, but we'll make it as safe as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Massimi, then Councillor Bolton, then Councillor Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to just step in again because my colleague mentioned something, and I'm a road user and cyclist. I use the CS7 to Waterloo almost daily, and just to make sure before this goes out on social media and they start talking about bus lane, blah, blah, blah. That design and scheme has been in operation for 20 plus years. I've got about 25 bus stops that I am crossing in various way and scheme and design on the CS7, Wimbledon onward, Clapham Common, you name it. There is common sense to use. We as cyclists have a responsibility towards pedestrians. Hopefully we all see a bus and a bus stop. But more importantly, I think what we need to do, and I guess everyone will be pleased to hear that, respectful cyclists and road user, we have to start to really enforce strong and firm fines for any cyclist or road user that do not stop at traffic light, that do not give way, and do not actually respect common sense and highway rules. At the moment, that's not the case, and we as a borough, we should start to take really firm action to give powers to the police and the traffic police to start enforcing this. This is the only way to have more people on the bike and more respect between pedestrians, road user and cyclists. We have to lead by example and need to be really firm on that. That's my point.
Thank you, Councillor Masiri. Councillor Bolton, thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair. And it's a question for Matt as well, please, Matt. Page D3, point number 8, where it says, our intention is to maintain ongoing liaison with local businesses and residents. I'm just wondering what form that liaison is or has been taking. It'll be ongoing according to this, but is the intention to implement something and then talk about it, see if the shopkeepers, for example, are happy, or is it to actually ask them first? I mean, I would have thought that having extra liaison, particularly with the shopkeepers, before this matter comes to the next place committee, which I think the chair has said would be in June, would it be possible to have extra liaison with the interested parties before anything is implemented? So that's the first question. The second one, as I've got the mic, you mentioned, Matt, that the currently illegal forecourt parking would be removed, and you alluded to the fact that that could cause some disquiet among the shopkeepers. So what is the plan? Where do you think that these shopkeepers will then park? The cars and vans, etc., that are currently illegally parked, where are they going to go, do you think? Thanks.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you for those questions, Councillor. So to answer your first question, so we have already engaged with the businesses along that stretch. We've done it door to door as well. We haven't just stuck a note and a sort of letter through the door or anything like that. So we have knocked door to door. We certainly intend to do more of that on the Kingston North Kingston section after the mayoral election. I've got no objection to doing it along that stretch again as well. I don't think there would be any harm in doing that at all, because we want to make sure that there's no surprises. It's only a small section compared to what we're already committed to doing.
Thank you. So once that particular election is out of the way at the beginning of May, it could be possible that we liaise again with the shopkeepers in particular during the month of May before it comes to another committee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Would that be something we could arrange?
Yep,
That would be great.
take that
Thank you.
away.
And the other question was about the illegal parking.
I mean that's a fair question. I guess the side roads is the obvious answer to that, and I know I wouldn't be surprised if there would be some reaction to that from residents in California Road and Georgia Road, for example. But yeah, I guess that's the most obvious solution. There is also, in terms of customers, I guess there's also the Aldi car park across the road, which I don't think they would officially want to direct people to, but it's a fairly logical place to go for customers, definitely.
Fine. Thanks very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Tracy.
Thank you, Councillor Heap. Well, it's just a general, obviously everybody here knows I'm not a fan of the cycle lane. I'm not against cycle lanes full stop. I think some of our cycle lanes in the borough are wonderful. The one that goes to Rains Park's amazing. But I just think the one along Kingston Road, to my mind, it's not big enough to have what I'd like to see, what I don't like, is the shared bus stops, particularly with pedestrians and cyclists. I use the buses a lot. I've nearly nearly been knocked over at least about 3 times. Sometimes my fault, I must admit. I'm used to getting off the bus and not looking, but I can see. My worry is I do a lot of work with the Kingston Blind Association, and so many of the blind people have said, it's terrible, we're frightened to use the buses now. That really worries me. And it says here that there was meetings with the Kingston Blind Association, but I've talked to lots of them, and they all say that they're frightened to use the buses now. So my main thing is that, you know, I'll never be happy with it, because I worry about the fact of getting on and off the buses for sighted people, but particularly for people with disabilities or visual impairment. So it's just an observation. I know it's going to carry on, but just an observation.
Thank you, Councillor Tracy. Good point, mate. Did you want to respond to that?
Well, just briefly, Chair. I mean, thank you, Councillor. And, you know, as I said earlier, you know, I do accept that the bus stops are probably one of the biggest compromise areas just because of the lack of space. We did engage with the Kingston Association of the Blind, and did have a meeting with them. I must admit, now reading this report, it doesn't really say what the outcome of that meeting was, but we'll make sure that, firstly, that I think we will make sure that we engage with them again before it goes to Place Committee, and we'll make sure it's clear when we go to Place Committee what they said. All it really says there is there was a meeting. So apologies for that. It's probably not as clear as it could be, but I'll commit to engaging with them again before we go to Place Committee.
Yeah,
and I fully appreciate that, you know, they are users that are probably most at risk in that situation. One thing that we are working with Transport for London, and I need to check whether this has been done yet or not, but it should be being done anyway, is that they are able now to make audible announcements on buses that you'll be stepping out into a cycle lane. And I don't know if they do along this road now or not. I know we asked them to. Oh, they do. There we go. So that's something. It's not perfect because not everyone's always listening, but you know, but it's one extra way of warning people, particularly if you're blind. Then
it's getting on the bus. I think I often hear them saying, be careful crossing the bus lane. The cycle lane when you get off the bus. But what about getting on the bus? You just have, you know, if you're partially sighted, you haven't got the visual capacity.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I wouldn't dispute that. I mean, one of the reasons we're looking at the surfacing is to make things as clear as possible, and it will be tactile. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Sillett.
I hope this is helpful. I get a lot of people on the doorsteps complaining about cycle lanes and bus stops. I cycle. The last thing I want to do when I'm going anywhere near a bus stop is to collide with somebody. I don't go at probably the pace that Councillor Massimi rides at, or these gentlemen here. But really, I find it amazing that any cyclist who is quite vulnerable would be cycling at pace in that situation. I think, I don't know if I'm paraphrasing you here, but you said you're talking about enforcement of the highway code. If it really is as prevalent and a danger as people are reporting it to be, let's get somebody out there and nick these cyclists who are endangering, causing injury. If they really are recklessly cycling, I don't know if there's anything in the highway code that says you shouldn't be approaching, a shared area at pace without taking due care and attention. It's mostly old people that seem to be complaining about it to me on the doorstep.
Do you want to come back on that, Matt? Thanks.
Well, briefly, I mean, in terms of breaching traffic law, then that's a matter for the police. And whilst we do have ongoing conversations with police, I think it's fair to say that it's not their highest priority. That's a reality. We are keen to continue education and encourage responsible cycling, because things, as you say, if you're cycling across a bus stop, which is a legitimate shared use area, then in that sense, you're not doing anything wrong, unless you are, as you say, not cycling with due care and attention. But that's a pretty difficult thing to enforce. So I think, it's not if they're cycling on a footway for which they're not meant to be there, then that's a fine. The police can fine you for that, and sometimes they will, or going through a red light, whatever it is. But if we've created a shared use area, if they're using it responsibly, they're not doing anything wrong. So it's quite a sort of difficult area to enforce, and I think the emphasis there needs to be on encouragement and education.
It sounds like there should be a sensible solution, and why are we struggling to come up with a solution when there's cycling lanes and shared bus stops everywhere? There must be an idea. I know you said there's no ideal solution; it's always using a shared space. But I just wonder whether we can borrow best practice from somewhere.
Well, in terms of the design, absolutely, we're borrowing best practice. You know, we are using the best practice guidance that's used London-wide now, and TfL have been involved. And as I said, not in your neighbourhood, but at London Road junction with Cambridge Road, right down the western end of this route, or before you get onto this route, we're actually undertaking some changes there to make that one clearer and better demarcated, which will bring it in line with current standards.
Could I ask a supplementary question?
By all means.
Do we have any statistics about whether anybody has actually been injured? Because the way it's being reported to me, there's an imminent danger of somebody being injured. You know, Councillor Tracy just said that she's nearly been knocked over 3 times. I hear people saying this. I've got no statistics. I wonder whether it's a fear that they might be, or whether it's actually happening. And I've got no way of actually assessing it, whether it's a problem or a fear, because people were very worried when the cycle lane went in that emergency vehicles couldn't get through, and apparently that is not an issue, and that's been tested and shown whether it's a fear or whether it's actually happening.
Just coming back quickly on that, Chair, I mean, I'll take that point away and double check it, but I think that the actual numbers of accidents that involve injuries are very low. They do happen, and there are some, but they are low. But obviously there is a fear and a perception feeling, and as sort of Councillor Tracy alluded to, what you have to be careful of is the kind of invisible situation, as it were, whereby people choose not to travel by bus because they're scared, and therefore there's no accidents. But that's not helpful for anybody. So, but I think in terms of if that makes sense, but I'll take that point away and see if we can see if there's any detailed statistics that we can share.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Massimi?
Thank you, Chair. Just for my colleague, I'm a considerate driver and rider. I'm going to answer, I mean, the zero risk does not exist, and this is nothing new, but I think having something secure by design, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel, if I may say, is it already exists. It's called a zebra crossing, and most of those bus stops that we have on the CS7 in London and anywhere do have a zebra crossing. Whoever enters zebra crossing from the side must give priority or give way to pedestrian unless there's a traffic light, which is active. So it is there and secure by design. And there are rules of engagement, if you want. Somebody riding a motorcycle or bike or whatever must, in most cases, give way or is responsible for riding these vehicles, and a pedestrian, which is supposed to be in a way more fragile or exposed, well, we need to take care in the same way that car riders or drivers is supposed to look out for, Dutch style when you open the door, and over best practice that we need to implement more. So the rules exist, the design exists, it's secure by design. I think it's common sense. We're making a lot of noise for things. We all have a role to play, and we just need to use common sense, no matter who we are, being pedestrians, dog walker or riders, hearing or visually impaired. And it's there, and it works. Let's not make a big mess out of it. Let's just make sure that we just look out for each other's, and we use plain common sense. It's there, we've got a design, it's not cheap, but it needs to be done, better late than never, and it needs to be fit for purpose and well maintained. At the moment, the challenge for me when you go in Kingston Road is there's hardly ever a sweeping machine doing it when you have the junctions alongside the roundabout and all of that. This is where danger happens: gravels, poor states, floodings, having to avoid a puddle. That is what we should focus on. Not so much about do we have an announcement loud enough or not, or people used to it. Most people using the bus are used to the routes, and they quickly get used to the potential danger. Same for the cyclist. That's just, again, a statement, and I'm happy to be challenged.
I'll just come back very quickly on that.
Yeah,
on the last point,
do.
the point about sweeping and maintenance. I do accept that has been a challenge. When this goes before Place Committee, we will be including an update on that. And what we're looking to do is find a better way of maintaining those existing lanes. So that hasn't been forgotten. Again, I don't think it's covered in this report in great detail, but it will be covered before we go to Place.
Chair, could I just come back on that?
Thank you. Yeah.
Can I just mention gravel as well? I've come off and broken my thumb. Gravel is like ice. If you go around a corner and there's gravel, you come off. I complained 2 years ago. the gravel that I came off on the junction of Galsworthy and Gloucester, Kingston Hill, is still there, and I see it all over the place now. If you've ever come off on it, you realise how dangerous it is. Yeah. And I was told that, you know, I looked at the rules, and apparently the council don't have an obligation to clear this stuff up. Well, that's what I heard. It's really dangerous, and it's still there 2 years later on a junction.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't think I've got much to add to that, other than acknowledge that that is a challenge in various places, particularly where we've got potholes and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Councillor Coogan, and then I think we'll wrap up if anybody else.
I don't know about the buses in Kingston, but when I've been in other areas, when a cycle lane approaches,
bring the mic closer to you.
When the cycle lane approaches,
oh, it's not switched on. Sorry.
When the cycle lane approaches, the bus actually makes an announcement. You're about to embark or disembark.
That's what we just said.
Yeah. So you said that. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anybody
Sorry,
else?
Chair.
Any more? No.
No.
Okay. This item's been noted, and your comments, and that they will be taken to the Place Committee, feed into that report in June sometime. We think it's going to be, don't we? Not May. Urgent items. I don't have any urgent items this evening, so I close the meeting at 21:07.
Go on then. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry about the time.
That's all right.